Deni, and everyone, how are you?
Oh gosh, what a week. It's good to be back here and to kind of stop and pause for a moment and think about this last week that I've had. It's been pretty big actually, Fi. God, I have to say there's been a lot of emotion from me this past week. Um, a lot of uh, a lot of anger, like really, like I can feel this whole wave of anger. Um, and I'm really interested in, I mean, it's always mine, obviously, but it feels bigger than me. I've got an action-packed chart in terms of my dark goddess arrangement in my chart. So I've got my black moon sitting right on my ascendant. And I've got Kali, the asteroid Kali is conjunct with my natal Kali. And I can feel all of the weight of that at the moment. It's quite a big energy to have. And I think that that's probably been something that I've spent most of my life trying to come to grips with, at sometimes control, at other times knowing that there is no control and that I need to just release as much as I can so that it comes from a cleaner place, because there's often a lot of truth associated with dark goddesses. And I think just where we're sitting on the planet at the moment, I have so much stored up anger at the patriarchy, at the, I can just look at it. I think it was John Howard came on the TV, the next Prime Minister of Australia, to give his views on something. And I'm just like, go away. You're so irrelevant as a voice these days. That's kind of where I'm surprising myself and coming from. So I've just really noticed a lot of that, and quietly wondering which bits are me and which bits are I'm just kind of feeling the collective feminine voice in the world. So that's been my week. Just
Well,
light stuff.
yes. Well, I'm wondering, the question that's sort of on my lips is that reflected in your artwork at the moment? Because I can see some paintings behind you, which I'm guessing are some that you're working on or have worked on recently. And as you're speaking, my eye kept getting drawn to them, and I wondered if that's the case.
Well, there's definitely been a darker element that has arisen in my work this week, which is kind of interesting. And I felt really called to, I mean, I think I always put land and my time on land intuitively into my art. But more than intuitively, I really kind of tapped into the land at Uluru, Katajuta, Kings Canyon, where we've traveled, and really tried to bring it out a lot more. So that's been happening concurrently. Whether that is also part of it, it's definitely been this whole different kind of slightly more deeper, darker elements this week that often don't show up in my work as obviously, because I love color, and there's often a lot of color in my work, but probably, as you see, this kind of stuff has been more where I've been headed this week. So I would probably say yes, there's definitely been an influence there.
Oh, I love those colors actually. I mean, they're great. And so, I was just looking at them and admiring them. I know if you're listening to this rather than watching it, it's a bit sad because you can't see them. But yeah, I mean, that feels like it's been a really big week. Have you noticed anything shifting within yourself because of that?
I guess just I'm trying to be really kind with myself about it all. Like I say, they're energies that I've lived with my whole life. And and I've probably made myself feel very wrong about the emotions, but they're that strong sometimes, these emotions. I mean, emotions aren't right or wrong. They're just there as I guess a response to our thoughts and the world and what we're thinking about the world. So I guess where I sit is that I'm aware of them. And I actually kind of this week, interesting enough, have been talking to them as if they're separate to me, which is, I see you, I see that you're there, but there are also, you know, ways that I need to operate in this world. And there's times where this is too much for the world around me. So I really need to acknowledge that you're there, but have you not take over my everyday world. So yeah, they've definitely been there, and there's been an awareness of, okay, I'm not going to just shun them away. I'm not going to shame myself for having them. I'm just going to speak kindly to them as if they're another person. And I don't know that I've done that in that quite that same way before. You know, I've released it in a kind of like a lot of embodied work, which I haven't been doing so much of lately. But this is a kind of a different place of negotiation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And I think it's, you know, a perfect reflection of the times that we're in as well, because I think, you know, I felt very much that over the last couple of years, we've been working more to be very conscious of our emotions and to allow our emotions to surface naturally. And I know that we talk a lot about, you know, oh, emotions are energy in motion. But when you think about that sentence and you realize that your emotions are merely a reflection of what you're feeling in that moment, and yet, how often do we try and push them down or suppress them or not acknowledge them? We've got so used to doing that. And I think over the last couple of years, we've all been kind of guided to work with our emotions in a different way, to do exactly what you're doing with them now, and almost go into that negotiation with them, to see them, to allow them, to honor them. And they release out of our body so much more quickly when, you know, when we do that as well. So I think it's really a perfect reflection of what a lot of people are feeling at this time and are going through at this time, and are learning to work with in a better way, in a more conscious way, so that they can release a lot of suppressed energy that they're holding on to, that, you know, is too dense for us. It's, you know, we can't do that anymore because our vibrations have shifted now. So I love that, you know, not that I love that you're feeling all of those things, but I love your reflection on it, because it makes perfect sense to me, and I'm sure it will to other people as well.
Yeah, and I think the other piece in this is, you know, I'm smack right in the middle of menopause right now, and I, you know, it's something that I really do want for us to talk about at times, because it's not one of those conversations that is, you know, I think it's opening up more and more. But there's so many women out there going through menopause and being overwhelmed by it and not having a space to talk about it. And I think a lot of the emotions that are coming up through me are because I've reached that point in life where they just need to be fucking expressed. You know what I mean? They're there, and they're there in our bodies in this way of, you know, we reach this period in our life and we don't care as much about pissing people off or, you know, speaking that truth. There isn't the um, the silencing that happens, I think, at other ages. You really, you know, you feel that need to, I don't give a shit what you think. I need to express what I'm expressing. So I think that's the other piece, that there is definitely this other drive going on behind me that I think any other woman that's had this, you know, has been through menopause or is going through it would understand.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And it's just reminded me, because I know when you were reflecting on that experience of feeling this anger, I remember thinking a few years ago, being in that space and being very angry with Clive a lot of the time without him actually doing anything. And going through, and I think you and I talked about it at the time, going through this process of understanding it was to do with not so much with Clive, although he was this frame of reference for the patriarchy for me at that time. It was just this rising of intense anger related to the patriarchy. And I'm wondering now, hearing you reflect that, because I know at that time I was right slap bang in the middle of menopause. I'm wondering if it's something that does start to release more out of our bodies at this time in our life, where we're shifting and changing so much, particularly hormonally, which then of course affects our emotions in such a strong way. So I wonder if other women are experiencing that too, when they're in that middle bit, whatever that is, slap bang in the middle of it, however long it lasts, of menopause as well.
Yeah. And I think it goes through such a, it's not a, okay, I'm in it now, I'm out of it. It really does go through this interesting, progression. I feel smack bang in the middle of it right now. And that's just me feeling, what I've been through in the last few years, and it feels like I'm in the thick of it right now. And what you were saying about, I remember you talking about Clive and the effect it was having on your relationship. And I can tell you right now that Ricky feels like he is taking the brunt of every white privileged male in the world. He often says to me, that's not me. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that I'm projecting a lot of that onto you, and I'm really trying, hard not to do that. But I love that you've reminded me of that. And that was something, they are the representation, whether they're, at fault or not. That's the closest we've got to it in our everyday. And probably why, these men go through menopause with their women as much as we do. Just in the complete,
they love us.
Just on the receiving end of it, right?
Yes, they experience it in a completely different way. And what I kind of can look back on now, and I guess really reflect on around that time, was how solid Clive was. And actually when I worked it out, what it was, it kind of alleviated some of that anger that I was directing at him unintentionally. And so it kind of helped us shift things in the relationship as we transition through menopause together, hand in hand.
Yeah. You have to wonder how many relationships break down through this time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's quite scary because this is such a significant shift in a woman's life, menopause. We can't just sort of brush it under the carpet. It makes such a big difference to us in respect of how we view ourselves as a woman, as a person, the shift in our body going from that place of having our periods and then no longer having them, and what that means to us, and the physical change. I mean, it's massive when you think about it. It's a wonder that marriages survive it, to be honest.
And like you say, probably a lot don't.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I think we're doing okay.
Yes, yeah.
Not that we're married, but just our
Yeah.
relationship, I think
You're doing
okay.
well. He's strong and solid too. And and I think obviously I remember us having conversations about this a few years ago when you were starting to go into menopause, and what that meant for you as a single woman going into menopause. And those were big conversations for you, or big questions for you at that time. But you've been with Ricky a while now, and so you've built up this beautiful foundation in your relationship together for this phase of menopause. So he can hold that space, I'm sure, very solidly for you as you swirl around him.
Watch this space.
Yes.
So Fi, how have you been? How's your week been? I know you've been on a few travels.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I've had a completely different week to that. I've had a very chilled week. It's been beautiful to be up north in the Byron Shire, to be traveling out on land, to be going to places like Crystal Castle, and sitting in that lovely energy, being by the beach. I went to my favorite beach, which I just love, South Golden Beach up there. And so for me, it's just been a week of a lot of driving and travel, but also a lot of just relaxing and chilling, and just being really happy, my happy place. So I've had a glorious week. Went up with a girlfriend, and then Clive rang me on Monday to say the builders were coming to do some work quite big building work in the house that we've been waiting almost 14 months for them to do. And so I came back to a bit of a building site, which wasn't great, but you know, it is what it is. And the weekend's really been about tidying up and starting renovating again and getting back into it and starting work again today for me. So I've had a beautiful, chilled week with lots of deep conversations, visiting beautiful places and really feeling connected again to the land and to the ocean. And yeah, it's just been very, very nice, much needed.
And and just thinking, just feeling into your week and that beautiful time that you've had, because I know how nourishing it is to spend time with girlfriends and to spend time away and road trips. You know, we're both right into that. So if you had to kind of theme the week that you've had, would you be able to do that? Like, was there anything in particular that might have arisen as a bit of a theme?
It's a really good question. Um, the thing that springs to mind, I think, is I don't know if it's so much a theme. I think it might be maybe just the connection between women, just that, you know. I think because I spent a lot of time on my own working. I mean, I'm not on my own because I'm always talking to someone and doing things, but when you're actually together and connecting and having conversations and doing things together, walking together and having experiences together, I think it really, the theme for that week would really be that it showed me how important that part of life is and how much I've missed it. I think that's probably what I took away from the week, and also a desire to do more of it, because you know we've been in such a time of physical disconnection from other people, and apart from going out on land and you know running our retreats and things, I've not done a lot of connecting with people physically. So you know that for me last week showed me the importance of being around other women and having those beautiful conversations, and you know just being in flow with whatever was thrown at us. It was just lovely.
Mm, beautiful.
Mm.
And I guess on that note, maybe we could look to where we're sitting now in terms of the energy and what the week ahead is kind of gonna bring. Have you got any thoughts on that you can share with us?
Well, I've been feeling very much this, I think, draw towards, I don't know, relationships, connection with each other. I mean, that feels very much as a theme that has been starting to surface for me. And you know, not just our, you know, our marriages or partnerships with people, but you know, all of our connections, all of our relationships. And I'm feeling that we're moving into a time of deepening or reassessing or kind of looking at our relationships either in a new or different way, or refining them in some way. It certainly feels like that for me. I mean, I came home and there were so many things that were triggered in the conversations around my relationship with Clive that I actually almost came home with this new perspective around our relationship, not from anything that was said, just from the questions that were asked, and actually going back over our relationship from the very beginning and seeing, you know, Clive again through these new eyes. It was actually really beautiful to kind of be reminded through the stories of our relationship and how it grew and all of the things that he did. And I feel very much that that is part of the energy we're all sitting in at the moment. Whilst that may be my sort of individual experience, it feels like there's a collective energy around that as well. So I'm noticing in, you know, in those people I know around me as well, that there's a lot of questions coming up, that there's a lot of redefining of relationships going on. And I feel very much like we're sitting in that energy. And I know that from an Akashic perspective, a few months ago, I was shown that we were going to be starting to reconnect at a much deeper level with each other again as a collective, but that this was going to start to come in towards the end of this year rather than at the beginning of the year. And this feels like the start of that. It's almost like we're going through this pre-connection process. It's like we're reassessing, how do we want to be connected to each other in a new way that actually fits with who we've become through this period of time. So that's what I'm feeling mostly at the moment. I don't know what that means in terms of astrology, but I'm really keen to find out, what you know and what you'd like to bring into that.
Yeah, I do feel it's interesting you talk about that reconnection, because I've definitely felt this desire to spend time with, like, physical time with other people, because I spend a lot of my time in the studio on my own, to the point where I have a girlfriend. We're going to have a day a week where we spend time in each other's workspace together, because it'll just be, it ignites conversation, it takes you somewhere else, it puts different things into your work. And so I've that's been this little drop in getting more connected, because there is also this other part of me that is very much just so happy to stay in my little cocoon, and not want to venture out. But I know that is needed. I don't know what that needed is, but I know that it's needed, so that I'm going to have to go out of my comfort zone. I mean, as you know, I've moved into this new art studio, and there's a collective, an art collective next door, and one of the young women photographers has a dark studio there, and she knocked on my door the other day and said, I'm having this, the whole laneway, Orchard Road's going to be shut down. We're having food, we're having lights, we're having people through. Do you want to open your doors and have people come through? Oh, hell yes, I do. And hell no, I don't. Both in the same breath. And I know I need to. I know that is part of community, and part of connecting, and part of sharing art. So I'll say it's on the 16th of September. We're going to do that here. So anybody that's wanting to come down to Brookvale and Orchard Lane on Orchard Road, number 8, please come down, because there's going to be a lot creatively happening with the Simply D next door does pottery wheel work, and has classes, and then I said the artist next door is a photographer, and she's got the dark room, and that's the main exhibition that's happening. But I'll also be having some stuff here, so that's part again of that connection. So I feel all that. The other major thing that I think is happening this week is astrologically, is Mars is entering Gemini. And that in itself is, happens. But Mars is actually going to spend this extended time in Gemini, because if it's going into retrograde. That's unusual. It's actually going to be in Gemini until next year. So there's this, Mars is the god of war. So there is this real kind of push energy, quite masculine energy, but it's also this real doing kind of energy that can be aggressive, but just can be forceful, quite a force. And moving into Gemini, and Gemini is an air sign, and kind of the air and thinking, and it's also duality, it's the twins. And so there's this place of, I think we started the conversation with really thinking about our emotions, and really starting conversation, because Gemini is a very communicative sign. It's ruled by Mercury, which is the communicator, the connector. So there is this drive to really be looking at how we communicate when we're in that kind of passionate, fiery zone, and actually, rather than just feel it, to actually really go up into our heads about it and think, okay, what is this? So that kind of works really nicely with where I was sitting last week. But there's also going to be a retrograde happening there. So that's a time of reviewing. How is it that I do this? What is it that I've done in the past? How is it that I can bring something different into it? So I think that also is part of what you were saying, of looking at you and Clive and looking back at your relationship. So that makes perfect sense. I think we probably will be sitting in that energy for a good 6 months, 6 or 7 months.
Oh, it certainly feels like it. It feels like this is the beginning of a shift for us all. And, we're just starting with this new awareness. I think this new awareness of ourselves, first of all, and then this new awareness of what that means when we're in relationship with others, and where we may or may not now be in alignment with some of the relationships that we have, and we're all shifting too. So for some relationships it could mean going that, like that, away from each other, and for others it can mean bringing them together. So I think it's just a deepening. We're in this time of deepening that awareness and observing ourselves within the relationships, and working out where we're going with them. So yes, I would agree. The next 6 months are going to be very interesting in that respect, as we all start to move more into reconnection again, in whatever form that that shows up for us individually.
And I wonder whether that will be more kind of one-on-one type of interactions. I don't know why I feel like that more so than big groups.
Oh, definitely. I'm really much more drawn to that at the moment. It just feels, so much more comfortable. And that you and I both love sitting in circle with a group of women as well. So it's not as if that's an uncomfortable space for us. But I just feel like there's a depth to conversations when it's one-on-one that you can get to. And maybe that's where we're starting. We're deepening it from that space. But I'd be interested to hear from other people and see what they're experiencing too, because you and I can give our perspectives, which are often aligned and different, but it would be lovely to hear from some of the listeners as well as to
how they're traveling through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be shy.
Email us, or just put a
Yes.
message on our YouTube or on our podcast. Can you put messages on our podcast?
I don't know, but if you can, please do. I mean, we'd love to hear from you. It just helps us to deepen the conversations too that we all have with each other. I mean, the whole point of this is the conversation piece, and what we hope, I think, you and I, is that we talk about things that inspires conversations with other people as well. But it would be lovely to hear back.
Yes, and I think what we'll do is we'll put our email address on both the YouTube and on the podcast, so that anybody can email us. If there's no other way, that might be a better thing to put there. So right. Yes, we welcome comments and we welcome questions and questions. Yes.
Have you got a question this week?
I have a question. Yay. And it's just really one of those ones that popped up during the week that I thought I'd bring to the podcast. Beautiful. And it's around intuition, and it's a question about us personally, and I'm going to ask it of you, put you on the spot. When, like, what role intuition takes in your life, and if you can recall a time where you have used your intuition and it's led you to where to somewhere where you're happy, and maybe where you've not followed intuition and the consequences of that.
Okay, I think that's 3 questions. I'll do my best to answer them. So, well, I firmly believe that we're all intuitive, and therefore we all hold the ability to work with our intuition. And I think that we tend to go on a journey with intuition. So when we start to become more aware of ourselves, so more self-aware, it naturally, I think, triggers our or helps us to tune in more to our intuition, because we're going inwards, so we therefore, you know, heighten our sensitivity around that. And I think that there is a point at which, when we go on that journey, we move from learning to work with our intuition to living intuitively. And there's often a shift that we notice within ourselves, and I also often notice in my clients as well when I'm working with them, when they've made that shift. And I definitely feel that for me personally, I'm in that place of, I just live intuitively now. My intuition is so much part of who I am that I don't even question it. I don't have to turn it on or tune into it. It's just always there because I work with it so much as part of who I am. So that's where I'm at with my intuition. In terms of what experiences I've had with working with my intuition, I mean, again, it depends on what your strongest clair abilities are. Mine is clairsentience and claircognizance. They work very well together. So clear feelings and clear knowing. So I get a feeling something's right, or I just know something's right. And there have been times like when, well, this is one actually where it didn't work out. There was a house a long time ago that Clive and I were just at the point of looking for a house, and somebody had put through our door that they wanted to buy our house. And we hadn't put it up for sale or anything like that. They were just interested. And we said, come along and have a conversation. And we ended up selling our house to them without an estate agent being involved in the process at all, which was great. And my intuition showed me, this is a really good thing to do for yourself. Try this for yourself. Where you want to buy a house, put some notes through the doors and see if someone comes, you know, responds to that in a positive way. And the house that I really liked responded and said, yes, we're interested, let's have a conversation. And I couldn't persuade Clive to do it. And I really regretted it, because I think if I had been more persuasive with Clive and we'd gone and had the conversation with them, we would have moved into this beautiful house that I had my eye on. And that was my intuition really showing me. And it's not that Clive was being awful, that he just didn't feel it in the same way that I did. And so we missed out on that, which has always been a little sad. But there's been many, I mean, I can't even think, there's so many times my intuition guides me, and it's so strong in a good direction, like follow this thread, that I don't actually even ask or question it anymore, to the point that it's so strong, I just do it without thinking. And there have been so many great things that have come out with that. Even, I would say, even one of those would be my relationship with Clive, because, you know, he was my boss, I was his PA, and what I didn't ever want to be was a cliche PA boss relationship. And yet I had this strong intuition around, it will be okay, you know, this is okay, you can pursue this relationship and it will be fine. And it, you know, 30 years later, that was a good one to follow. So I guess that would be my best one.
I bet you've never been, he's never been your boss again.
Definitely not. He's tried on many occasions and failed.
Well, can I ask, because there's a really interesting point there around intuition, and that is the bit where you do have, you get a strong drive or feeling, intuitive feeling to do something, and then you come up against your partner who doesn't. And
Yeah.
so that's, you know, that's an interesting place of not being in a position to follow your intuition.
Oh, yes. And, you know, and of course, at the time that was incredibly frustrating. And, you know, there were a few discussions around that, and a few sulks. You know, in my less conscious days, I could sulk for weeks on end. But what it actually did do eventually was it started to shift into me becoming more confident in trusting my instincts and sticking by my guns. And Clive also shifting into an acknowledgement that my intuition works. And, of course, that's a learning process, because whenever we're developing our intuition anyway, we learn to trust it. We don't just always trust it overnight or in one go. We have to learn to trust it. And so now in our relationship, when I get a really strong feeling, Clive listens to it. But at the time, and that was a time when I was in my very early days of really developing my own intuition anyway, I didn't really trust it fully either. So, it's no wonder that it turned out that way, because now when I get a gut instinct like that, or I'm given a direction, Clive will listen, because he's also learned to trust it. And he's also learned to trust his own intuition as well. He's very intuitive too.
Mm, beautiful.
Mm.
Mm,
How about you? Let's throw those questions back to you.
mm. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember when, obviously, like you say, that time where you're learning to feel more into your intuitive side. And I distinctly remember when I was with a previous partner, and we were going to buy some land. We were sitting, and I had the lawyers in front of us, and we were just doing the final signing. Every part of me was a no. Every part of my being was saying no to this, and I did it. And it was it unfolded in maybe a 10-year, probably not quite 10, but maybe 8 years of pain, of that that decision, and of trying to get out of that decision, and that land was never developed. I mean, it was just like, well, wow, look at what happens when you go against something. And it would have been difficult, to actually to turn back, because when I got that clear no, it was really at an end point. But man, it taught me a lesson on, okay, when it's that strong, you need to follow, regardless of another human being and what they're wanting you to do. That is your sign. So I think that was the beginnings of me really knowing that was the most important thing. And the rest of it came on top of that knowing, because I'm also claircognizant. I get a real knowing. And then I'm also, I think clairvoyant would be my second one, is that seeing thing. But so, yeah, I think that was the real beginning of me feeling intuitively into an intuitive life. Like, as you say, it is now so much a part of me that I can't separate it out into not doing it. But I guess the other thing would be art, because when I remember, maybe for the last 7 or so years, whenever I asked a question along the lines of, what is it that I need to follow, or what is it the path? I often ask that at the beginning of the year. I always got painting, and I would often, it was a part of my life, but it wasn't something that I was following just my art and painting. And so that's just increased my confidence to follow. That has just increased year by year. It's been a little bit more of a dipping my toe into that one, but definitely that's been a huge intuitive calling that's got louder and louder and louder. Otherwise, I think an intuitive life for me just feels like living in some kind of flow. And you can kind of feel when you're out of flow, and you just need to nudge yourself back into, okay, where is that again? Where is that place, that center?
Beautiful. Well, I love that question. And, again, if you've got any other questions that you'd love to send us just to have a conversation around, please send them in. We'd love to hear from them.
Beautiful. Well, I think that's us for us this week, Fi. Well, we've got a another conversation with an artist that was living in Africa and is now in England or the United Kingdom. So I'll be putting that up this week along with this conversation on YouTube and also on the podcast. So stay tuned for that.
Yay. See you next week.